This week's podcast might ruffle a few feathers, but if your kindergarten students do not know what a sentence is or they don't know all their letter sounds yet, they should not be writing sentences yet. Welcome to the Kindergarten Toolbox Podcast. I'm your host, Amy Murray, here to help you simplify kindergarten with tools and strategies that actually work with real live 5 and 6-year-olds. Let's dive into your shortcut to calmer days and more confident writers. And that may sound dramatic. You might not like to hear it, and you might push back and say, well, my curriculum says I have to. I get it, but hear me out. So many teachers are frustrated because their students can't write sentences. They forget capital letters. They leave out words. They're just writing random letters and hoping it makes sense. Or worse, they just sit there and stare and don't try at all. And we assume that the problem is effort or stamina, but most of the problem is they don't actually understand what a sentence is. They might be able to differentiate between what a word is, what a letter is, what a sentence is in visuals, but they don't truly understand that a sentence is a group of words that tells us something. Those words are working together to tell a story. And until they really understand what a sentence is, there is no point asking them to write one. It's like building a house without knowing what in the world a house is. So today, we're going to talk about teaching kindergartners what a sentence actually is. I can remember way back when I started teaching kindergarten, our big box curriculum didn't have much of a writing component at all. But what little it did have had me starting teaching sentences in week 3 or 4 of school. And while I believe that shared writing wholeheartedly has a place in kindergarten, and it's important, expecting students to independently write sentences that early in the school year is just setting them up for failure. And the more I learn about writing, the more I understand that it is so important to build confidence from the beginning so that students are willing to try. Because so much goes into writing sentences. They need to understand that letters represent sounds, and then we put those letters together to make words, and then we put those words together to make sentences. And a sentence isn't just a random group of words, right? Like, oh yay, I know words now. Wet dog, big, small, tall, that's not a sentence. Those are just groups of words. And so they really need to understand all the underlying things before we write sentences. And that's without the conventions. Then we've got to teach them capitals and lower cases and spacing and proper punctuation and all of that. There's so much for them to remember. It's such a difficult skill that if we just throw them right into sentence writing without mastering the parts that get us there, it's not going to work, no matter what your curriculum says you're supposed to do. Great, but how do you teach 5 and 6-year-olds what a sentence is? That feels like higher level thinking. That feels like a lot. Yeah, it does, but we just simplified it to a sentence is a group of words that tells us something. We already understand what a word is because we've been practicing building those in our phonics unit, right? Or we've been practicing labeling pictures with words or building lists with words before we even get to sentence writing. Okay, that's important. They need to know how to write words before we get to this part. But when we're talking about what is a sentence, that's really what it is. It's a group of words that's going together to tell us something or to ask us something, but just the basics is a group of words to tell us something. And we would chant that at the beginning of our lessons. We defined it, and then we would say, hey, a sentence is, and the kids would chant back, a group of words that tells us something. And it was fun, and we had a poster on the wall, and we would have, tap it out, and we would say this chant. So they were really remembering what a sentence is. There's a purpose here, because I am certain at some point in your teaching career, you've had a kid write a string of letters or random words on a paper and bring it up to you and say, "Hey, teacher, what does this say?" And you're like, "It doesn't say anything." Well, yeah, because they're not connecting that we write to tell something. We're not writing and guessing what it says. It's not magic. That's not how this works. But we are writing words together to tell somebody something. There is a purpose for writing, and that is what sentences are all about. And once we've mastered, okay, this is our purpose for writing, and once we've understood a sentence is a group of words that tells us something, we dig a little deeper and understand that a sentence has a naming part, that's the subject, and a telling part, those are your verbs and your predicate. And they need to understand that every sentence is going to have that, a naming part, who or what the sentence is about, and the telling part, what is happening. And using those terms was highly effective with young kids because they can understand naming part is telling me who or what is in the sentence, and then the telling part's telling me what is happening. I see lots of well-meaning teachers out there who want to pair the naming part, the telling part, and then add a setting. And that's great, and that extends your sentences. And once your kids really understand what a sentence is and are writing them independently, go for it. But at the very beginning, I would suggest that you focus just on a naming part and a telling part and putting them together to make sentences. And once you've got that down, that a sentence is a group of words that tells us something with a naming part and a telling part, then you're ready to look at some groups of words and determine, is that a sentence or is that not a sentence based on our definition? So we would have groups of words like the red ball. Well, that's not a sentence because it doesn't have a telling part. It doesn't tell me what the red ball is doing. If it said the red ball bounces, yes, that's a sentence because now I know what it's doing. We would look at a handful of groups of words just like that. Some are sentences like the cat sat on a mat. Okay, the cat is the naming part. Sat on a mat is the telling part. And just looking at sentences that way and deciding, does it have a naming part? Does it have a telling part? Yep, it's a sentence, or no, it's not a sentence. Really does help them to start to learn that they need to have both of those things in their sentence. And then you can move on to some like little pictures where you have just the naming part and they need to add the telling part. Or you have just the telling part and they've got to add the naming part. When you break it down into these smaller steps where you're just asking them to add a naming part or finish the sentence by adding a telling part, you're breaking it down into more manageable chunks and you're helping them to understand what a sentence is rather than just showing them a picture and saying, go write a sentence about it. You're preventing the freeze that happens when they get overwhelmed with all the steps that it takes to write a sentence, and you're setting them up for success. So if you have students who aren't able to write sentences yet, or if you haven't introduced sentences to your whole class yet, pause, take a look from above, think about all the things that go into writing sentences, and really make sure that they understand what a sentence is and how to put words together to make a sentence before you move on to just simply writing for the sake of writing. Now, yes, daily writing practice, I'm all for it and it is important, but they need to know the basics of what a sentence is before we expect them to write it. It's unfair otherwise. And if you're sitting there saying to yourself, that sounds great, but I don't have a writing curriculum, or my writing curriculum doesn't do this, but I'd like to try it, where do I start? Be sure to check out our beginning writing bundle. I will link it in the show notes, so wherever you are listening along from, you can grab that link. And inside the beginning writing bundle, you'll find our labeling unit, our listing unit, which is where I would start before you tackle sentence writing. And then our sentence writing unit is there as well. You'll find 16 sets of picture writing prompts with sentence starters and without to keep them writing all year long. writing folder reference pages, all the things you need to set your students up for success in writing. So this can be used to supplement your writing curriculum. If you don't have a writing curriculum, it gives you a strong foundation of where to start and set your students up for success so that you can build confident writers without stressing yourself out, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's all there for you. So if your students are struggling to write sentences like mine were, then pause for a second and think, am I teaching them about capitals and periods and punctuation marks, and they don't even know what a sentence is? And then maybe rewind a few steps and go back to teaching them the basics so that they understand what a sentence is, why they are writing it. It will go a long way to help them become capable, independent sentence writers. Thanks for listening to the Kindergarten Toolbox. I'm Amy Murray, and I'm so glad you're here. Be sure to check the show notes for all the links and resources from today's episode. For even more tips, tools, and support, head to teachingexceptionalkinders.com or connect with me on Instagram at teachingexceptionalkinders. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow along and subscribe to the show and take a minute to leave a review. It helps other kindergarten teachers to find us too. Teaching kindergarten is tough, but you're not alone. Here's to calmer days and more confident writers. You've got this.